One of my favorite all-time Gandhi quotes is that the best way to find yourself is actually to lose yourself first in the service of others. Now, this is something that I myself have tried to exemplify throughout my life, and that's the purpose of this show, Sundays with Josue, where we try to serve as education and inspiration for the next generation of entrepreneurs. However, our next guest exemplifies that to an even higher degree, Rick Wagner. Now, Rick is a very impressive individual for a multitude of reasons. Firstly, they're professor at the illustrious University of South Florida, Go Bulls. But secondly, they're also a musical artist, so they're a multifaceted, talented individual. Now, thirdly, they actually are one of the cornerstone members of the New Standard Group, which is a nonprofit organization based out of Tampa, Florida, that's whole purpose is to set the new standard and to help enrich the next generation of young Black men. But thirdly, and most impressively, in my opinion, is that he is the founder and director of Project Gametime, a organization that is profitable and running in multiple states, and its purpose is to serve as an after-school enrichment program for young youth. And additionally, it also serves as professional development for those who interact with them, such as teachers and educators. And what's the most impressive about all of this, in my opinion, is that he has done so for the purpose of making an impact. So he found his purpose and created an entire business and company around that. So at this time, I do want to go ahead and welcome my friend, Rick Wagner.
Hello, 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 world. What's up?
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Rick. I'm really pumped to have you here, man. This is one episode that I'm super excited about because I think that as an entrepreneur, people are oftentimes searching for what to do, and I think you're the perfect person to kind of like exemplify what you can do with entrepreneurship and make an impact and love doing it.
That's right. You can do good and do well if you are passionate about whatever it is you're passionate about.
Hmm.
The only part of the equation you have to figure out is how do I turn that into liquid? How do
Yep.
I connect that to something that can sustain itself and sustain yourself at the same time?
110%, 110%. So with that being said, let's hop right into the interview, hop in the hot seat. So the first question I want to ask is, what was the initial inspiration for Project Game Time?
Man, it's crazy because I think starting Project Game Time came from an epiphany of mine where I got tired of making other companies and people millions of dollars.
Hmm.
And that was inspired. That was inspiring, right? So,
Hmm.
when you have a talent or a gift, whatever it is you want to call it, you know, you may exude that gift onto other people under the umbrella of other companies who, may have different visions and different interests.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's hard for you to see how much you're worth as an individual when you're working in an organization or a company that has maybe a different vision for their program or for their purpose.
Hmm.
And I think the pivotal point of mine that started the fire to want to begin was, you know, my ideas, my creativity, sweat equity, just pure work, um, is responsible for millions of dollars on other companies, whether it be gross revenue receipts for nonprofits or it's for companies, just
Hmm.
off of conversations that were had for me at the time. And I think there just came a time in my growth working under certain companies that I felt like I was hitting my head on a glass ceiling. It was like,
Wow.
where's the next level? How do I get past just a director, or how do I get past a master instructor? And there were no answers out there. So I
Yeah.
went on my own journey to seek out, what is how do I get to that next level? Well, someone like myself had to create that, and that turned into a fire of passion of entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um, yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. I think that oftentimes, it's amazing if you put an entrepreneur into a role in a company, they tend to perform really, really well because they have an abundance of energy. They're super passionate, and typically they're working in a role they care about.
Mhm.
But at the same time, what's interesting is that oftentimes those people don't stay very long because you only have so much room to spread your wings in a chicken coop. If you're not
Right.
out there and having a chance to create your own environment for yourself, that's ideal.
Mm,
Someone with a high level
mm,
of skill set will simply just pivot and go in a different direction. So that makes a lot of sense that, you felt confined in those other organizations, even though you were performing
mm.
well, because you weren't able to fully grow, which makes sense.
Right. Right.
So with regards to the modality, right? So what made you
Mhm.
decide to choose to go the route of professional development and enrichment of the youth?
Yeah. So so youth. My passion is my purpose, right? And my purpose is to create safe spaces for youth and for people. And that's where I kind of attach that. I've been in youth development almost my entire life.
Mm,
And what happened was my sister, she passed away when she was 23 years old, and I was 20 years old at the time in Queens. And it kind of changed the trajectory of where my life was going.
mm-hmm,
Um, I was in Queens, single parent family, the whole deal, man, and trying to figure out, how could I find myself somewhere beyond Queens, beyond where I was in. And my only way out was to apply to a job working at a sleepaway camp in Brewster,
ah,
New York called Clearpool. Shout out to Clearpool, they're still there.
mm-hmm,
And from the moment that from the moment that the kids came onto campus. So this is a beautiful camp, in New York, and they bring in kids all from Bronx and from the rough neighborhoods. And from the moment that those kids arrived on campus and got off that bus, that feeling that I had inside of me
mm,
was my passion. It told me like, you are forever going to be connected to youth for the rest of your life, and
mm,
you're always gonna want for other people to feel the comfort of feeling safe and being themselves no matter what age they are, right?
ah,
And that comes from being able to recognize and create these type of spaces where you feel safe and you can express yourself and you can be successful. If you think about, even in my situation of how I decided to go the Project Game Time route was because I was confined in the space. I did not feel comfortable there.
mm-hmm,
And challenge is good to a degree, but you need a degree of comfort as well to be able to extend your arms and to try things and to be risky. You
yeah,
know, so to for me, that moment in my life kind of turned my timeline around, and I knew that I would always be connected there, and that was my passion. So there goes my entire career working for different organizations and companies, giving back to youth. And then there goes that same kind of situation again, where I'm at a ceiling in space where it's like, okay, now that I've made it to this level, what's the next step?
mm-hmm,
Well, I got to go out there and I got to find the next step where I got to create it because nobody's going to create it for me, especially if I'm the one that's making them all the money and giving them all of the access to the youth that these people who create these organizations, they don't live in these neighborhoods. They don't grow
yeah,
up with the way these kids do, the way I did. They don't know what the inner cities of the world really feel and look like.
mm-hmm,
So there's also a passion in being able to let youth know and be an example that you can come from very humble and small beginnings, right? And you
yeah,
can still achieve if you are committed enough and you're passionate enough and you really want it. Just know that the work comes in the creation of it, and it's not that someone is going to hand this blueprint to you.
true, 110%. I think that's the hardest part, right? Is the actual putting in the sweat equity, the work to create it. In that process, did you ever feel any fear? Because I mean, it sounds like you were in a more traditional route of your career, and then you pivoted. So when you
Mhm.
made that transition, did you feel fear during that? And if so, how did you overcome that friction?
Absolutely. Fear, nervousness, anxiety, these are all feelings that are familiar with change, familiar with not going against the grain, disruption, and not doing what's normally set out and what the masses are doing. Um, and luckily for me, in the situation of when it comes to inventiveness or entrepreneurship, the fear has always been a fire. It's
Ah,
always been something that changes the way that I approach it and say, aha, I see a lot of red tape here. Well, I'm going to figure out how
Ah.
I could create this lane. I'll tell you one quick thing about this whole thing. One of the smallest things that happened in my career as a youth development specialist that added a lot of fuel to this fire was the fact that when I was a counselor and instructor in different after school programs, they
Hmm.
banned do rags, right? Like
Really?
do rags,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
you so it was unprofessional. You can't wear do rags and so on and so forth. And subconsciously, in the back of my head, I was like, I need to create a company so that my staff and my kids can wear do rags. You know why? Because that's a part of our culture.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's something that we should be ashamed of. And if I can't
Mm.
create a space where young people feel um, comfortable and safe enough to celebrate a part of their culture, then to me, I'm not bringing the authenticity
Mm.
to the company the way that others are. Now, I get it. There's time and place for everything, right? You
Hmm.
dress a certain way, you look a certain way, and different spaces, but in a space where you want to allow a child to be a child, and
Yeah.
you want to connect with them, and you want relevancy to that culture, can't take the things out of the culture. You have to celebrate it, embrace it, and
Hmm.
utilize it in a way that uh it has meaning behind it. You
Yeah, of
understand what
course.
I'm saying?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
um 3 years into Project Game Time, I had my first at holiday camp. We had our first do rag and head wrap day where we
Ah,
gave out prizes and kids would come in with. I mean, I've seen the most phenomenal do rags I've ever seen in my life. These
yeah.
kids came out and they showed out.
Hmm.
And it's all fun in the moment, silly in the moment. We having a good time, but the message
The
behind
message
it,
behind it.
the
Hmm.
message. If I inspired one young man or young woman, young lady to say, "Wow, this is incredible. My whole life I've been told I can't do this, and I've been in a safe space now where I can do that and be creative and be celebrated for my culture." Think of the fire that burns for that young person, and that's me.
Hmm.
I'm going to serve, so I want to give that feeling to you because if I did it, there are people out there that can do it just as well
Yeah.
and even
Yeah.
better than me.
Man, that's a really powerful story because I myself used to wear a lot of do-rags. And I think that, if you're not part of the culture, you have no idea that it also has a purpose. It helps like your hair do a certain, like look a certain way with waves and whatnot. But I think what's really cool
Mhm.
about that story is that throughout that, you can see how you ran towards the gunfire, so to speak. Just the way you're
Right.
talking, it's almost like what you're saying is when I feel that fear or I feel that hesitation, it's almost like me know that I'm going in the right direction because that's when I'm going out of my comfort zone. That's when I'm going against the grain. And especially when you're doing that with a strategy and with a purpose in mind, like you said, I want to create a safe space because
Yeah.
the amount of value provided for that in like those youth is huge because self-esteem is typically developed when you're younger, right? And your identity and what you think and perceive about things such as your race or things such as your culture associated with your
Right.
race is framed very, very young. So creating a space where you're able to celebrate things as from the culture that these kids have and have a space where it's actually being edified and glorified, I think is wonderful. And that's something that people who haven't experienced it may not understand, but that
Mhm.
goes extremely, extremely deep. And I think also that's something you mentioned as well of being an example. That I
Mhm.
think is one of those things that has been empirically proven through the modeling effect to have ramifications for generations. That once you see someone that looks like you achieve something, your ability and thus your capacity to achieve the same or similar thing, it literally increases to a statistical significant degree. So that's really powerful. Thanks for sharing that story. It's important.
Absolutely. This is so important, and I'm proud of that moment, and I'm proud to be able to say that I did it. I'm not ashamed. I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
space where, and as entrepreneurs, we go through these spaces of fear. We go through fire. We go through ridicule. We go through people telling you, all right, you know what? That's cool what you're trying to do, but I don't know how successful you're going to be. Or
Yeah.
it's you walking into the room with the other side and the other people, they're not going to accept you for the way you are. If you are truly who you are and understand who you are, the world will submit to the decisions that you make and who you represent. You will become colorless. You will be able to navigate through rooms. People won't see color anymore. What they're going to see is someone embracing who they are and not ashamed, and
Hmm.
understanding the power and command that they have when they walk in the room and embody their true self. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's just what it is. Every
Yeah.
little moment that we do something small for a young person, we're unlocking or we're shifting an algorithm within them that gives them access to say, you know what, the next time I'm confronted, I'm gonna understand who I am and how comfortable I can be in this space. So
Hmm.
that's the whole thing. It's about really getting yourself to a place of understanding of who you are and how valuable you
Hmm. True. And I think also too, when you give someone that place of comfort, especially when they may not be
are.
getting it at home or in other different contexts, they then are able to understand the difference between feeling comfortable, feeling anxious, feeling uncomfortable, and then they can set boundaries to establish, their different boundaries, which is super important. So, hearing you talk about this journey and the Project Game Time and the different things that you've done throughout your career, how have you seen yourself uh, grow and develop as a person through growing your company?
Mm. Well, there's no success without pain and struggle, right? And
Hmm.
growing for me was always, it was two things. It was struggle and it was sacrifice.
Mm.
So one of the biggest struggles that I had as an entrepreneur, as a business person to grow was when you're conflicted sometimes as a business person between moral compass and chasing the bag.
Yeah.
For me, that was a big deal. I have done business with many great partners in many great situations, and I ran into a situation where this is now one of my biggest clients, right? Easily generated six figures for the company, I employed 20 to 25 people at this program, but the the company, the partner I was working with wasn't in tune with where our morals and vision go, so to speak,
Hmm.
as far as how we conduct business, how we speak, how we communicate, and how we, kind of take care of others. And I had to make a very critical decision. Do I continue this partnership and business relationship for the sake of the bag and chasing a bag?
Yeah.
Or do I part ways because in the long run, this is not going to help me, not nor will it help the people that I'm trying to develop. Um, and I had to make a choice. I hit a wall and I had to make a choice, and my choice was to part ways. Now, mind you, this is a company that, like I said, was our biggest client, easily six figures a year, no problem. It was good. But
Hmm.
what I've learned and what I've grown through is learning that all money is not good money. And
Mm.
you, just as customers have to pick the right company to do business with, the company has to pick the right customers in certain aspects, right?
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking about retail or we're not talking about travel where it could just be like this one off transaction and you walk away. The investment me as a company makes into my client is also benefiting and affecting, young people, people growing up, the
Yeah.
culture. So it's like you have to make these hard decisions, and I did. And when I did, what did it do? It gave me that fear complex again, where I said, "All right, now I got to figure it out. I got people that's gonna need
Mm.
jobs. Guess what I got to do? I got to go figure this out."
Yeah.
I made sure my people were good and kept going, and we've grown exponentially. And I'm so grateful that I hit that wall.
Yeah, man, that's hearing you talk about that moment and expressing gratitude about that, I think is super powerful because I think the amount of growth you can receive from challenges is vastly underrated. Additionally, too, I think that example you gave, right? So yeah, and from you can look at it from different perspectives. So on the one hand, maybe you may have seen an initial dip in revenue, but the mental bandwidth you probably freed up and the
Mhm.
emotional baggage you don't have to carry, I think is part of what allowed you to grow exponentially because pursue like moving forward while having conflicting ideas like and cognitive dissonance within your mind is is a very difficult thing to do. And I experienced a lot of that when I was in medicine, which is part of why
Mm,
I pivoted myself. So I definitely
mhm,
empathize, and I think it's going to resonate with a lot of different business owners. And I think it's a good lesson too, because with it,
mhm.
because there's always going to be future opportunities, right? 1 year of a dip in revenue, is not going to necessarily make or break your company when you have the next 10, 20, 30 years to still be in business, right? Now, if you're
And
publicly
when
traded
you have the
company,
right team.
mm-hmm,
Mhm. I was gonna say,
exactly.
and when you have the right team, you have people that believe in you, And listen, my pathway is not always like it's not a one size fits all pathway. There's some people that may have said, listen, I'm gonna thug this out and I'm gonna continue to work and transform. But I had to be conscious of who I was and how I respond, and I can't get caught up into the idea of who I am or the idea of what the outside world thinks that I am. I put a company together for a reason and it has a purpose, and anything that gets into that way, I have to make decisions on how to navigate. So,
Yeah,
to the other business entrepreneurs, hopefully, this will help them understand that listen, sometimes you have to move along or you have to navigate another way, and it's going to be a loss and a setback. But is it about the short term or the long run? Are you selling a sweater and that's the only contact that you're gonna have with that customer in the short run and you have to take that L? You might want to just take that L. But if
yeah.
we're talking about longevity, community, young people, culture, what's gonna matter 5 and 10 years from now? No, I can't align myself with things that do not contribute to the purpose of this mission because it's beyond me.
Hmm. And so, what was the journey like for you finding your purpose? Like, you definitely seem to be very self assured, self aware, and you know where you are and you have your conviction. But how did you get to that point?
Um, I'm still I'm still learning every day. It's a
Hmm.
continuum. It's a continuum of loss. It's a continuum of fear, of reassurance, of being unsure. I think that I can only say that I'm blessed to have a lot of the experiences that I've had to make it to where I am now. And I'm continuing just to study myself and try to master myself to really understand where my fear comes from, where my trauma comes from, what do I respond to and why, what things
Mm-hmm.
give me anxiety, what things do I step away from and why, and what are the tools that I could use to continue to navigate that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that with the team that I have around me, you know, um, it's been crucial for me to understand who I am and what I contribute to the world because the real ones, and we'll get into this, but like the real ones, if you have a real one on your team, and that's crucial to your success.
Yeah.
I've been on a solo mission almost my whole life. It's always been like, listen, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get it done. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna be the accountant. I'm gonna be the lawyer. I'm gonna be the marketing person. And you get older and you understand, like, yeah, you could fall and you can get up and dust yourself off, but you could only fall about so many times until your knees go out, you scuff your elbows, and you get
Yeah.
head trauma. So if you don't have a team around you that's going to see who you are from different perspectives and analyze how you fell and then tell what's the other steps that you could take so that you don't fall so hard the next time, it's not a sustainable process.
Mm-hmm.
So between knowing that and trust me, I say this in full confidence, like, I go through the replaying of my mind of my past and things where I felt like I was a punk for not doing that and not doing this, and this one got me out of this. But then I have to really, I look beneath my feet and then I look around me. I look at my wife, my daughter, my sons, my kids, and my family, and the fact that I have so many that's around me that believe and love, have love for me, and it's all the reassurance that I need to know. Like, I'm still here, and I'm not defined by yesterday. I'm not defined by a week ago. I'm not defined by that playground fight where I took that L. No, I'm standing 10 toes here with a family of support and love. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
continuum of going through that and understanding that puts me in a place where it's like, nah, I get myself a lot. you
Yeah.
know,
You
um,
know,
I get who I am.
that makes sense. And it's the point you talked about that the real ones will know. I think that's a super powerful point because I think oftentimes we are looking for how can I get the highest quality, employees and people to be part of my team. But
Right.
oftentimes, what I've been experiencing and just seeing, because I've been reading a lot of books about entrepreneurs. So Phil Knight, I'm reading his memoir currently, and it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing what you notice these trends that the highest performing, employees, people that will perform at the highest level, also
Right.
expect the highest amount of service and they ask the deepest question. So I remember when I first was interviewing someone for a board position for my startup, I this was an individual who was on a company that was over $10 billion in revenue in 2021. And what he
Mm.
asked me, it was really a very good question, but it was a very broad question. What is your vision?
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to accomplish? Where do you see this going? And he asked it in such a way that he was like, before I even start this process, I want to know that you know where you're going yourself. And so I think what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, those different practices you have to make sure you're in a good headspace is pivotal, because as you start to build that team around you, they're looking to you to make sure not only to support you, but also to making sure that this person is someone worth following. Right. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, what are some practical steps you can give someone who they want to increase their self-awareness, they want to increase their ability to be a leader? Like, what are some ways that they could work on themselves to make sure they have their purpose and their vision really fine-tuned?
Um, so I have two things. One is if you can start with the end in mind. And the end in mind, meaning what's the ultimate goal? And that's the most broad thing you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Most people will probably say happiness. That's a good answer. Your whole life, your roadmap is to be happy. What does happy mean? Now, analyze what your gifts are and what you're passionate
Mm.
about. If you're not sure about what if you're not sure about what you're good at, what you're passionate about, then what that tells me is that now you need to just start listening. You
Mm-hmm.
need to start listening to feedback, responding to, looking at people and their body movements, expressions, what makes them smile when you're around,
Ah.
right? So start to understand what reactions you get from people when you walk in a room, and don't be afraid to ask people, what is
Mm-hmm.
it that you like about me? What is it that have I done anything that made you smile in the last? Da, 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 and also understand your fears, understand the things that make you have anxiety, or you're apprehensive about, and find where the whys lie in those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
find like really like I learned that I have email anxiety sometimes.
Hmm.
There's sometimes where I'll get an email and I attach it to such like it doesn't even say anything negative, but I attach it to such negativity because I may have had an experience in my past dealing with work where an email came out and it was kind of nasty, and now I just attach that to every email. It's negativity first and then later, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for me to understand that, now I make a plan. I see an email, I take a breath, I give it 24 hours before I respond. Or I share it with somebody that I have in confidence who has a non-biased response that could give
Yep.
me some light on it. And
Mm-hmm.
and and these are the tools that we continue to use to kind of like navigate and master ourselves so that we can we could find out what it is that we want to do and how we want to get there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, which makes sense.
Um yeah, absolutely. So I
I love
say, listen, just master learning yourself and use the people around you to help you because people will tell you their body will, their language will. People keep it real in ways where like you don't. It's not always black and white like somebody's just gonna tell you straight to your face. But if you're really paying attention to somebody when you're talking to them or
Mm-hmm.
how it is in a room and a responsive, the message will be sent. You'll get
That's
it.
true. That's true. Especially when you
Hmm.
start looking for those things, right? Because for myself, before I started hosting events with one of my friends. And when I was
Hmm.
growing up, I was super shy and super quiet. But it wasn't until, I
Hmm.
started getting different environments. I said, let me just try to become more sociable. I started trying those
Yeah.
events, and people said, hey, you actually, thank you for making me feel welcome. I was like, oh, okay, maybe this could actually be a
Hmm.
thing. And then I started this show, et cetera, et cetera. So when you start to look for, what you're saying is very, very true. So I hope people are really listening, and they may want to rewind it back, because it's important to, people will give you feedback. People will say, oh, you're kind of funny. You never know. But when you're looking at yourself,
Hmm.
often those times you miss those things. It goes completely over your head. So, it's really cool
Right.
how you talked about trying different things and testing different things for yourself. So and you're
Hmm.
finding what works for you every day. So what has been one of
Yeah.
your biggest mindset shifts internally that has as you have progressed on your journey?
Mhm. So mindset wise, um, let's go back to what I said earlier. You're only as good as the team around you.
Mm,
You're only as good as the team around you. And for me, when you're an entrepreneur, you're gonna be cursed with the idea of doing so much by yourself that you feel like that is supposed to be the norm. So that when your company grows and your talent grows, you step in all the time and want to do the work for them and say it's not perfect and it's not this and it's not that. Let me make an adjustment. The mindset for me is I had to shift from being a role model to a mentor in business. So let
mm,
me explain what I mean. So the role model is the person who could they do everything perfect because they could walk in a room and they walk in a room the right way. They shake the hand at the 90-degree angle. The language is perfect. Everybody loves the role model. But the thing about the role model is when role models have talent around them, role models feel like they need to be in the room modeling every single thing every single
mm,
moment for the staff member or the employee. I needed to shift to more of a mentor. So the mentor has the knowledge of a role model, but has figured out how to do the step back, right?
mm-hmm.
How to do who's the dude known for the step back with the
Is it
man, well, he
James
just got traded
Harden?
to the system. Harden. You
Yep.
gotta do the Harden. You gotta. The mentor knows how to step back now and transfer that information, enough
Hmm.
information into the employee to where they can sustain. Is it gonna be perfect like the mentor wants? Absolutely not. But it's not supposed to.
Hmm.
That's where trust comes in. You've given them enough knowledge to know that they know how to navigate the system and they know the template, but they're doing it their own way. And that's actually more beneficial and more sustainable
Mm,
because having someone who's saying you have to do everything exactly to the T the way I do it is the reason why you have staff that quit and staff that hit their head on a high ceiling because they're like,
yeah.
well, what is it that I'm not doing? I'm supposed to be doing everything the same way. And it's like, no, that's because we want you to stay right at that level for the rest of your life and continue to feed me the money, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So the mentor, the step back is the biggest shift you have to make as someone who wants a business that's going to last for the next 3 and 5 years.
Hmm.
Um,
Man,
and
that's
recognizing, like I said, the real ones know, and you know when you got a real one. Without Coach Ty, without Coach Roger, without Scott or DJ Fame, Janine, Exclusive, and so many others that make Project Game Time what it is. It's not about me anymore. I was the idea and the visionary. Once I decided to step back, I'm in Tampa, Florida, and they're in New York, crushing New York right now, and I could sleep at night. That is very important.
yes, very much so. What you talked about letting them have their creative flexibility in the Phil Knight book, Shoe Dog. One of the quotes from the book is,
Mhm.
"Don't tell people how to do it. Tell them what to do, and let them surprise you with how they do it." I think that's a
Mm,
very perfect quote. And that guy built Nike, so I think that we're in good company. With what you're saying here. You
man,
know.
absolutely.
Hmm.
I've been
So
impressed many times by the step back.
yeah, yeah. When you give them the chance to see, and that's how you let people's true potential show, right? And I think people who are
Mhm.
highly skilled, they feel like pride in their work. When you're able to say something
Amen.
as simple as, "Hey, can you come up with a maybe an event schedule for the next quarter?" And you don't even tell them what type
Mhm.
of events, and they come up with different ideas that you may not have never have even thought of, and then
Right.
yeah, you have a chance to let them grow. So, what would
Mhm.
you say was your biggest struggle with growing your business, and how did you overcome it?
Mm. Struggle, struggle, struggle. Um, outside of what I just spoke about was like it's kind of the mindset shift was also the struggle was the step back. Um, one of the biggest struggles was being able to sustain my business remotely, right? Like
Ah.
to be down in Florida and then have my program running up in New York and New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
and mainly because you know even though I wasn't always at all of the sites when I was up north, I was accessible and available. I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna meet with you. I'm gonna have a call with you, or we'll talk with your leadership program.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that struggle again, it goes back to the conversation we just had about kind of trust. It was like sometimes you also have to pull greatness out of your people too,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes your people don't know what they're capable of until you pull it out of them. It's in there, you see it. Your job is to be the mental genius you are to unlock that within them. So for me, I needed to unlock from my staff the ability of autonomy, the ability
Ah.
of conversation, the ability to communicate. Oh my goodness, something's going wrong at the Harlem program. We having a situation. Somebody get Rick on the phone. Nope, you calling Coach Ty because you know what? Coach Ty knows how to have a conversation. And Coach Ty knows when he's in over his head as well, and he knows when to step back and say, listen, I'm not I'm not okay with this or I'm not safe with this. Can we revisit this another time? And then he bounces back to his mentor, which is me, who'll be like, all right, tell me what happened. Let me give you feedback. Let me coach you through your next conversation. I'm not even going to be on the phone with you in on a three-way. Go do that.
Man.
Here's your email. Looking at your email, I see words that trigger me. All right, let's look at this email. Let me ask you questions about how you wrote this email, how you addressed them, some grammar stuff. You give me your feedback. How would you feel? Reflect on it. Okay, now it looks good. I look at that. That makes me smile. I think we're good to go. Boom. Send them emails out. You're good for it.
Man, and sending them back out there, back into the fire. So how do you combat the like? Did you like? How do you? I'm imagining that most entrepreneurs and you
Mhm.
yourself probably felt some initial fear, right? When but giving the person the
Right.
autonomy and sending them on their way, you're sending them
Mhm.
out of the nest, so to speak. How do you combat that and
Mhm.
like and allow yourself to relinquish control and to let them have autonomy?
It's understanding that the same feeling you get when you transfer that autonomy is the same feeling you had when it was all on your own shoulders. You made
Yeah,
mistakes too.
true. Yeah.
You was at the top. You made mistakes. You had bad conversations. You looked at stuff and was like, that's scary. So it was like understanding that this could go incredibly well or this could go incredibly bad. But no matter where it goes, I'm prepared to deal with it because
Mm-hmm.
I'm prepared to have my staff back. If I trust my staff, I know they're not going to do anything purposefully to harm the business. So if they make a mistake, it's all right. Let's coach it through. So for me, it was that, and I have my what I call my gunners, is my top people who work and they have conversations, and sometimes things get a little out. But the thing is, like, we could always shake hands at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day. Like we're real friends. We have real relationship. Like I'm in the business of relationships. This is not you just walk in here, do your job, punch a clock, and leave. We have
Yeah.
relationships. You can call me and tell me about your family life and what's going on here, and we could get right back to the business the way we need to get to it. So, the fear is always going to be there, the feeling is always going to be there, but it's just a little bit easier when you're able to have a conversation with that person and
Mm-hmm.
you trust that person is going to do right by you. The
Mm-hmm.
real ones know. The real
True.
ones know.
True. And I think that point you mentioned was so powerful that when either way you're gonna have fear, right? If you have to do it all yourself,
Mm-hmm.
what if I get overwhelmed? Or what if I myself make a mistake? But if you give it to somebody else, you're still gonna have the anxiety of, oh my goodness, well, what if they make a mistake, right? So
Right.
I jokingly describe entrepreneurship as controlled terror. So and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of accurate because at the end of the day, there's always gonna be a new situation, but that's why it's such an
Mm-hmm.
amazing process because you do grow as a person, and oftentimes to reach
Yeah.
your goals of impact you do have to grow as a person. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for sharing that. So I know I've been asking you questions, but we do have questions from, I put out a poll on social media. So I do want to go ahead
Hmm.
and bring up some of these different questions. So one from Jennifer we have is, any advice on how to find your purpose?
Any advice on how to find your purpose? Um, yes, find out who you are. Master yourself. You got to understand who you are in the light, in the dark, good times and bads, and through it. Um, Again, listen to people, listen to family, listen to friends, and be really aware and critical of what you hear. Don't take certain things in passing as a grain of salt. Take the things that are said effortlessly as something that's impactful, right?
Mhm.
When somebody says something of truth, it's usually effortless. It's not like they have to sit down and analyze it unless they're on
Yeah.
a podcast with Josue, right? So like it doesn't have to be it does not have to be analyzed. It doesn't have to be somebody's gonna say something in passing that might be the gem that needs to turn on and unlock something within you that you never knew you had. So just really turn up that awareness and understand who you are.
110%. And I think another part too, personally, because something that Moses said back in the day when I did my podcast with him, he was talking about that
Hmm.
oftentimes reflecting back on what you used to enjoy and love when you were in your youth can be another very powerful way to do so, because oftentimes that's when you're in your, in your infancy and in your youth, that's when you're flowing in your most natural state before life does what life does and makes you jaded, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. Before the trauma shapes everything else that you think about, you're probably having fun doing things. And like some of the most, you know, powerful relationships are built in like summer camp. You
Yeah.
know, I,
Yeah.
I didn't go to summer camp as a kid, but I worked at a summer camp, and there's a lot of staff that from my first year, like we're still friends now. We still talk and connect, and I still check on them on Facebook. They check on me. They know what's up. They know what's going on. So it's just like when you're in that state of kind of like this carefree state, and if you can go back there, like try to meditate and think about those things, I'm sure you'll find a gem somewhere.
100%. DeAndre asks, did you face any struggles specifically as a Black entrepreneur? And if so, how did you handle it?
Oh, absolutely. Black entrepreneur, you kidding me? Um, when you're working in the business of youth development and education, there's not a lot that look like you that have a company. So what happens is, when you're putting proposals and plans together, people don't take you as seriously. Um, I put countless proposals together, and I used to put all these analytics and language because that's what I've seen and known. And I said, well, maybe this is what will help me cross over. But it really didn't matter.
Mm.
Um, and to get and oh, when it comes to pricing things is, you know, what you may see on other people's papers of prices. They look at yours. Yours is 50% low and still like
Mm.
$20. Like it's crazy. Um, so one of the things that I've done is like I've aligned myself with a lot of like-minded people, other Black entrepreneurs, and other entrepreneurs in general who understand from the outside looking in, or I wouldn't say understand, are empathetic and understand that there's a necessary and there's a need for the spotlight to be shined on us. So I would say align yourself with great other entrepreneurs, Facebook groups. The New Standard Group was, I mean, they're going to take my platform to another level just by aligning with brothers who are connected with a mission to push our culture forward. So, find your power in numbers and groups who are like minded so that you can be helped on so many different angles to grow and to be successful.
Yeah, that networking part is key, because I think also too, like talking about we touched on before, that when you see people who look like you doing it, it helps you have that more self esteem to that I can do it too, and it will help you push through some of those struggles that you inevitably will face. That any entrepreneur faces.
Mhm.
Jessica, what made you decide to be a professor?
That's a good question, Jessica. Shout out to you for that one. So, um, I was called,
Mm.
And I believe a little bit in destiny. So being a professor was not on my plan. My plan was to move to Maryland and to expand Project Gametime to the DMV area. Shout out to them. And because of a lot of speaking engagements that I've done and workshops that I've done over the nation, I got an email from a dean out in USF. And I gave it thought from the angle of, well, professor's not in my plan, but me being a professor, what could this do
Mm.
for young black boys and girls and other people that seek knowledge? The type of doors it could open up. So I said, this is a good decision. So what helped me make that decision was not just the title professor, but the fact that the subject matter was contemporary commercial music, right? So my
Mm.
thing is always about safe space and relevancy. And there are not a lot of programs in higher education that focus on music of today that youth are playing and experiencing today. Most of it is, more classical or dates back from years. So this was also something that was innovative and cutting edge. So for me, it wasn't about what it was going to do for me personally, but what it was going to do for my people. It made all the sense in the world.
Man, that's cool. It ties back into the knowing yourself and your purpose, but like I can see how it all tied together, because that
Yeah.
literally it went from your purpose and helping more people and serving more people. This opportunity presented itself. Looked at it through that lens of, will it help me achieve my purpose? The answer was yes. You jumped on it, and here we are
Right.
today. I love it.
Right.
So Keith asks, how do we help the next generation not make the same mistakes we did when it feels like they don't listen? Oh man.
Well, this is a tricky answer because um, we're always going to help the next generation, but our job is not to prevent the mistakes.
Hmm.
Our job is to guide them through the lesson. The mistakes are a necessary, if you want to call it a necessary evil, depending on which side you're standing on, you may call it a necessary evil, right? Mistakes are going to happen. That's fear, that's trauma, that's, I don't want to start a business because of all of these mistakes that they're supposed to. It is a part of the journey and the story. So we can help the next generation by guidance and encouraging them through the lessons of the mistakes, um, or the shortcomings or the challenges that they have. It's always going to feel like they don't listen. You know why? Because that's why they're the next generation and they're not ours. The generation before us wasn't listening to us then. That is also kind of like it's the natural order of things, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, I'm teaching contemporary commercial music today. Tomorrow or next year or the next class, it's not going to look the same. So what's my job? My job is to tap in with what the youth are listening to today and encourage it and find the musical nuances that are relevant to my music growing up so I can marry them and say,
Mm.
listen, you were listening to this, you were listening to Triple X Tentacion. Do you know that he has a lot of pop like um lyrical structure or so on? I'm just making this up. I'm not saying it's true, but for the sake of argument, I'm taking the concepts that they listen to and I'm giving them a generational marriage so that
Mm.
there is respect for us. And
Yeah.
that's how the ears open up, because it's like you're just not force feeding me stuff from back in the day, but you're giving me some relevant points to marry those things together. You know
Mm.
what I'm saying? So like when what's that big song Juice World, R.I.P. Juice World came out with, Lucid Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And so the kids are listening to it, and I'm like, did you know that Nas did this and it was written? Did you know that that sample came from a Sting song? And
Mm-hmm.
now it's like, now I want to listen to what this guy is talking about, because he's taking something from where I am right now and making it relevant to the history. So I'm validated and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So appreciate you, support them, and learn ways to marry what they're doing today. with the things that you've grown up and talked about or gone through.
Man, that's a really powerful answer. I think that all, like your example also shows like the common human thread that connects us all, right? Like you mentioned, like
Hmm.
because our generation didn't listen to our previous generation, our parents, we didn't listen to them. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just how things go. We all think that, oh, you're old, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand, you didn't go through what I went through, but the cycle is
Hmm.
very similar. So I think what you just talked about and the example you gave is phenomenal. I think also too, trying to be an inspiration and trying to do different things and have different things that you can show to the next generation that's
Hmm.
inspiring to them. I think that's another part of it
Hmm.
too. What's his name? It's not Ty. Yeah, Ty Lopez, I believe it's his name. Yeah, Ty Lopez was talking about it. He was saying that's why a lot of the youth look up to like rappers and athletes because they have all these assets, the Lamborghinis, the flashy watches.
Hmm.
They can see these
Hmm.
material things and they look at them and they get impressed. They get inspired. Like, I want those material
Right.
things. How did that person do it?
Right.
Let me try to mimic those actions. But I think it's a
Hmm.
lot. It's a lot harder to show that you have wisdom, right? There's no $50,000 wisdom bar,
Right. You
but
got
those
it.
things
You
are
got
just as
it.
valuable, if not more valuable.
Hmm.
So, trying to
Hmm.
inspire them in different ways, in creative ways. And I think that example you gave of showing that, hey, we actually have a lot more in common than you think, young man or young woman. So that's phenomenal.
Hmm.
Man,
Absolutely.
man, that's Rick, this is some good stuff. So we're coming up on the end. I went through all the questions. Is there any final points
Mhm.
that you want to leave our audience with?
Um, I feel like I should say something, even though I don't have nothing off the cuff. But I just want to I just want to reiterate, you know, finding yourself, being aware, and finding the real ones in your circle. And you'll know the real ones. You'll feel it. You'll understand it. They're on the same frequency. They speak the same language as you. If you want to grow, you have to do a lot of internal work. I'd say about 90% of the work is internal and 10% is about awareness and the things that are around you. And you know, we need help, us black entrepreneurs. We need help. We need more of you. There's so much room for so much more. So, um, the fear thing will be okay. Take a dip, get in there, try something on. If it don't work, go back to the drawing board because you know what, you're one step closer because now you know something that maybe a direction you did. So
Yeah.
try it on.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
one more thing that won't work. So now you can just scratch it off the list and go on to
You
the next
scratch
one.
that off and go to the next joint. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And also, if someone wants to reach out and talk with you, network, I know projectgametime.com is one way, but what other ways that people can to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Social media. So it's at Project Game Time one word. At Project Game Time one word. My email is rick at projectgametime.com. You can email me.
Perfect.
Um. Yeah.
Perfect.
I like to talk sometimes.
Perfect. On occasion. All right. Well, Rick, thank you so much. I hope you guys got immense value. We're going to be back. This is going to be a bi-weekly interview series. So we look forward to seeing you guys next time. And Rick, thank you once again. And we'll catch you guys next time.
I appreciate you. Take care now.